Hello, Veronica. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Well, my name is Veronica. Since this is an IELTS course preparation, we're going to do this in English. If you don't understand or you want me to repeat or speak slower, let me know. Okay? All right, so IELTS, let's just get this screen shared. Perfect. Okay, everyone, it's very nice to meet you. My name is Veronica, and I am one of the IELTS course teachers here at Canaway. So I help students prepare for the IELTS test over a course of 3 months, which is recommended as the minimum preparation time beforehand. All right, so I see a few of us here. Nice to see so many faces, fantastic. So if you have any questions or comments or anything at all you want to say during my little review here of our courses, please raise your hand. There's a little hand button and just speak up. Okay, I'd love to hear any questions you have or anything at all. All right, so the Canaway IELTS courses, that's what we're going to discuss today. We're going to learn all about what Canaway has to offer for our courses and see what we do learn here at Canaway. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the IELTS if some of you are curious or are not too familiar with how it is. So, what is an IELTS exam? In case anyone here does not know, it is called the International English Language Testing System. Yeah. And it's world renowned, so it is recognized in all over the world, almost every single country actually. And it's used for academia, business, or immigration purposes mostly. So I'm assuming that most of you guys are preparing for your IELTS for different reasons. It is very, very important to have in any type of business or academic setting if you're not a native speaker or come from a native English speaking country. So it's very good for applying for immigration visas to countries that are English speaking. So the States, Canada, Australia, England, anything like that, they will a lot of the times like to see an IELTS score. University, it's absolutely necessary. So if you are going to study abroad at university, they will need an IELTS test and will probably have a special score they want from you. Like they will require a 6 or 7 or something. Most international jobs will require an IELTS score if you apply to this job for a position. They do want to see your English ability. So it is something that's very, very good to have on a resume. A lot, same with job promotions, of course. If you want to move up in the company and manage or work with international clients, it's helpful to have an IELTS score, a good IELTS score, to show that you can communicate well. Business visas, if you do get a business visa, it almost will always require an IELTS test score. So that's depending on how you're immigrating, if that's what you're doing this for. And some other reasons, of course, is just that confidence while living abroad. If you do well on your IELTS test, your English is great and you will have a lot more confidence and have ability to have no problem actually communicating. And just general polishing up. So that means it's an idiom meaning to make your CV or resume look great. So it really does have a massive impact to have an IELTS score on your resume. Definitely for international companies. So it is very, very useful for a lot of things for any type of advancement or immigration. So does anyone have any questions before we continue on? Good. All right. So let's take a little bit more of a look at what the IELTS exam covers and also what Canaway covers. So there are 4 parts to the IELTS. Maybe some of you might not know this quite yet, but there's speaking, reading, writing, and listening. So all the parts of language, really. So speaking is one that I think is really important to do with a teacher, with an IELTS preparation teacher, because it's the one skill that's very difficult to practice by yourself. If you don't have anyone to talk to and correct you, it's very difficult. So Canaway does really focus on speaking. Even when we cover all the other parts, we do a lot of conversation. We do a lot of warm up and cool down activities where speaking is involved. So speaking is something you will do in every class quite a lot. So you can practice that as much as possible. Reading, so you're going to have to read and answer questions on the IELTS test. You have to write. Some people love writing, some people hate writing. Most of my students are very extreme with their views on writing. And you have to write a short and a long essay. So get ready to do some writing there, work on those skills, and listening. Of course, you'll have to listen to recordings and answer questions on it. So the IELTS covers all aspects of language. Any questions so far? We're good? Okay, let me know if you are having any problem understanding me. Okay, but I see some good faces showing you understand. All right. Okay, and of course at Canaway, we cover all of these. We do speaking, reading, writing, and listening equally. So 1 week per month of each type. So you will have all of these tasks covered equally, with a lot of really focus on speaking, of course, because you will speak in every class too. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with which type of IELTS you're going to take, but there's 2 types, and we do balance between both of them for our Canaway IELTS preparation classes. So we do a bit of both. So first we have academic, and then there's also a general. So you can do whichever IELTS test that you need to do depending on your situation. So academic is obviously for academic test takers. So this is usually for university applications or college applications. Anything related to schooling will require academic, like 99% of the time. Some professional registration, business visas, for example, will need it. And then there's the general, which is more for everyday test takers. So like a general immigration, or if you just want to polish up your CV or just have an IELTS score on your resume, general's a bit better. It's a little bit easier, in my opinion, because it's more about everyday situations. And it's just a little bit more basic, while academic is academic. So the vocabulary might be a little bit more difficult, more formal, more high level, and will need a little bit more specific type of study. And general is also fine for like migration, most visa applications, but of course do double check with this before you decide which IELTS to take. When you have time in class with your teacher, we have small classes, so you have a lot of time to talk to me or whoever else you need to talk to for any advice or help if you're not too sure which one you want to take, or if you have any questions about them. We have lots of time to discuss it and give you more information. So does anyone here plan on taking the academic IELTS? Not sure. What about general? Is anyone here planning on taking the general IELTS exam? Or you're not sure yet? No hands? No, not sure. Okay. Well, it's okay if you're not sure yet. We can discuss that in class and help you out with whichever one you need to take. Okay, so let's talk about our courses a little bit more and what Canaway can do for you. We are going to jump into all 4 parts shortly, just so you can see what they will be like. So there's a thorough study of IELTS done in 3 months. So it will take 3 months for you to do the entire IELTS course. So it's about 3 weeks on and a few days to a week off, and then so on. So it's you get little breaks, but it takes a total of 3 months. So it's a lot of good studying time. So we will spend 3 weeks total doing the speaking test practice. So there's 1 week per month. So over 3 months, it's basically 4 weeks of, there's 1 week of speaking, 1 reading, 1 writing, 1 listening, and then there's month 2, and it continues on that way. So you'll be able to go through each one and change. So you're not going to spend too much time on just one and then forget it. So you will have it spread out nicely. So in the speaking test, you will learn lots of tricks and techniques and some tips as well to answering questions in part 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to cover all 3 parts. We'll go over them if you're not sure how it works with IELTS, but we'll go over all 3 parts throughout the course. Actually, every month will be a different one. And you'll get lots of practice. You'll get lots of mock tests, actually. So every class, you'll get to answer questions as if you were in a real IELTS test. And lots of feedback and tips and focusing on improving your answers. And we'll also look at how they want you to answer. So there's very specific techniques to the IELTS speaking. They don't want you to just answer like you would in your everyday life. There's a very specific thing they're looking for, very specific ways that they want you to answer. So we in Canaway, in our classes, we will cover all of the things that the IELTS examiners want you to do and how you can get a 7 or 8 score on your IELTS test. So you will make sure, or we will make sure that you know how to answer your questions to get that high score that the examiners want to see. Then, of course, 3 weeks total. So 3 weeks will be the reading test. We'll focus on reading activities for the IELTS. So we'll learn some techniques. We're going to learn about all the 3 sections of reading, which we'll get to, I'll explain a little bit more shortly. We will have reading mock tests, lots of reading practice in, and we're going to look at real examples of reading assignments that you would have for the IELTS test. So we will see real examples, not just whatever reading of any type. We will look at actual IELTS reading activities, so you can really practice what to expect. 3 weeks with writing. Like I said, some students really love writing. Some students just do not like it because they never have done it really since high school. So we'll focus on it. If you are not really comfortable with writing, we will get you doing better with your writing. So we are going to look at the different forms. The writing test is different if you're academic or general. So we'll cover both of those tasks depending on which one you are doing. And we'll also look at essays. I know that's a scary word, but you do have to write an essay in your writing test. If you're academic or general, you both have to do that. So we'll practice essay writing, exactly how to write an essay. We'll look at lots of synonyms and adjectives to use to help you get a better score. And you'll practice being able to write those full word counts you need to write. So don't worry, we'll get lots of practice with essays, and you will even do some mock tests in class that will be just exactly like the IELTS writing test is. So you'll get real hands-on practice. And finally, the listening, also 3 weeks with listening as well. So we will do some real listening practice where you will listen to actual IELTS listening activities that you would on the test and practice answering questions and go from there. And in class, I'll help you out by improving your listening and how to do it effectively, because there's a lot of tricks and techniques to listening to the IELTS listening activity effectively. So you don't miss any information and you know exactly what to expect. So when you finally do the IELTS test, you will know exactly what to expect, and it won't be a big issue or a surprise at all. And finally, last point here, on the side of everything that we do for IELTS preparation, we will also do a lot of other review to improve your general English, so you have a better English level and confidence when you do your IELTS. So we will take a look at grammar. We won't spend too much time doing general ESL, but we are going to review specific grammar that is very helpful in your IELTS test. Grammar points like the present simple, the past simple, the present perfect, and the future simple are very common tenses that you will use in your actually all speaking, reading, writing, and listening. So especially for speaking and writing. So we will focus on those specific tenses quite a lot. So you're really comfortable and you have a very good grammar understanding. We're going to look at practicing synonyms, which is a very important part to the IELTS test. Improve vocabulary and just your overall English in class. So you're going to have a higher English level as well when you're done these 3 months. It's a lot to cover. Okay. Any questions so far? Good. Okay, great. All right, so let's take a look a little bit more at all the different parts of the IELTS. As I mentioned, there's 4. So first, we have the speaking test. So in case anyone here is not too familiar with how it works, the speaking test has 3 parts. So part 1 is, I think, the easiest one. It's just short questions. It'll take about 5 or so minutes. So for this one, we're going to, even though it's easiest and there's short answers, it's very important to speak the way the examiner wants you to. So we're going to learn specific techniques about how to answer well and what the examiner looks for. They don't want these simple, quick answers. They want lots of adjectives and synonyms and good intro phrases and conjunctions and examples. So we'll practice that so you know exactly how to answer your part 1. Of course, we'll get lots of practice. Almost every day we do speaking, we will have a little warm up with part 1 style questions. And we'll learn how you can get a high band score and how it's different from a low band score. So you'll see an example of how a low band and a high band looks and how they're different. So you can know how to aim for your goal band score. Part 2, in my opinion, is probably the trickiest one. Some people call this the cue card question. You might know it as that as well. So this one actually involves 1 minute of planning and up to 2 minutes of talking. With 2 minutes doesn't sound like a long time, but it's kind of a long time to talk nonstop about a certain subject. So we will do, I like to focus on this a lot, really to get you confident in this type of answer. So we will learn, I know it doesn't seem so important, but we will focus on that 1 minute planning of preparation. You get a 1 minute to plan for your answer. So we will learn tips and tricks on how to plan effectively so that you can use your minute well. So you're very ready for your answer. So we will also get lots of mock tests, lots of practice, and learn techniques on how to get a high band score for part 2. So how to talk for 1 to 2 minutes straight. The topics are always general in speaking, so it's something like sports, vacation, food, environment, technology, that type of thing. So it's not something it's not going to be the most difficult topic to talk about, but it's about being able to talk well with lots of synonyms and for a full time confidently. So we'll get lots of practice to get you there. And finally, part 3 is very similar to part 1. It's just slightly longer. So I usually recommend part 1 should be about 1 to 2 sentences, give or take, for your answer. And part 3 should be about 2 to 3 sentences, give or take, for your answer. So it's slightly longer. They will all be about the same topic. We will cover multiple topics during the 3 months. So you'll get practice with all the topics that you could get asked about. So like I mentioned, hobbies, sports, education, the environment, technology, social media has been one lately I've seen on IELTS tests. Also childhood as well has been one. So there's a few everyday topics. And academic in general, it'll be the same. So don't worry about that. It'll be the same for both. So we'll, same thing for part 3. We're going to focus on that, how to answer effectively, and what the difference is between a high and a low band score. Okay. Please, if you have any questions during this, please just put your hand up. I will happily answer your questions. Okay, here are some examples from the actual Canaway courses, just little pictures from the PPTs we have. So this is an example of some question and answer practice that we will start all our speaking classes with. This one here is about holidays and vacations because that's a common topic in your IELTS test. And this is actually what part 1 looks like. So these would be part 1 styled questions. With every topic we cover, whether it's vacation or technology or childhood or whatever it is, we will always cover vocabulary. So we can do a quick bit of review at the beginning of every class of different vocabulary words related to the topic. So here's just some examples of travel themed vocabulary, sorry. So we'll do that every class, at least a couple of different chunks of vocabulary, just to improve or review your vocabulary words to give you a bit more vocabulary for your answers. Here's an example of the part 2 or the cue card question. So we're going to look at actual questions. So this is an example. Describe an interesting journey you have been on. So that's an example of a real IELTS question that you might get. So we will do a lot of practice like this. So you can do your 1-minute planning, you can answer with the class, everyone will have a turn and you will get lots of feedback, lots of tips. We'll listen to examples. I can give examples as well of how to get that really good score. And specifically, since our classes are small with the IELTS, you get a lot of one-on-one time. So as a teacher, I can help you to improve specifically what you need to improve, because everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. So we will focus on whatever it is that you need to improve. Okay, so that is our speaking. So this is the reading part. So the reading test has a total of 3 sections. It could include multiple choice, true, false, and not given, which we will make sure you're very clear about what that means, because that's a little bit different in the IELTS, and a lot of students are very surprised when they see this, when they take the IELTS for the first time. So we will make sure you're comfortable with what that is. Sometimes information fill-in is basically just filling in the blanks, like missing words, and heading matching. So matching a title with the paragraph that best fits. So those are just some examples of the type of reading questions you will answer. So in the reading test here at Canaway, we will practice all 3 sections and different task types. We will learn reading techniques and techniques on how to take the test, of course, and just work on your overall reading comprehension, because it's important to be able to understand the main context of what you're reading. And of course, you'll get lots of mock test practice. It's really important, of course, too. Okay, so here are some examples of what our PPTs do look like in the reading part of our IELTS preparation. So this is an example of just some links that we will get. So we will look at different examples of real reading passages that you might have to read in the IELTS test. And we'll do it together. We'll be timed because sometimes that's very difficult for students, I find. They're really good at reading, but it's the time. They get nervous and they get pressure when you have only a certain amount of time to read. So we will practice with the timing and learn techniques if you need any help. And of course, review answers and see what you might have done wrong and how to improve. So the reading test is 60 minutes, just for any information. That's how long it takes for real. There's 3 sections, a total of 40 questions in total, and 1 mark for every question. So we'll look at techniques on how to do that effectively. And for the reading one, it is different for academic and general. So you will have different type of tests. All right, and this is just another quick example of one of the academic reading, actually. So this is what an academic reader or test taker would have to do. We're one of an example. So we're gonna look at lots of different type of tasks what they would consist of, and looking at lots of examples so you're ready for anything you might get on your IELTS test. Does anyone have a question? We're okay? All right. Okay, so great. Let's continue then and take a look at the next one. So we have our writing. I think this is my favorite. I love writing, but some people don't. But we'll focus on this one equally to every other type of test. So there's 2 parts to the IELTS writing. So task 1 is 150 words minimum. Okay, and it's going to be something like a short letter, an email response, describing a diagram or a map. Now, as I mentioned here, the task 1 is different if you're academic or general. So you'll have different type of tasks. So if you do an academic one, you're going to have to describe something very factually and only with what you see on the picture. So no opinions, nothing like that, purely academic. So you'll have to, the thing you describe won't be too difficult. It's about bringing the vocabulary in to give very solid, effective answers. Something like describing a diagram, like how paper is made, or a map of a city, or a map of a city in the past and the future, and how they're different or the same. So we'll be just describing an image. Well, if you're doing the general IELTS, it will be most likely like an email response. Like you have to write a letter to your coworker, or you have to, you're applying for a job, or you're writing to your friend to apologize for missing their birthday party or something. So it's going to be more of an everyday type of writing, like an email. So we're also a really important part that I don't think I mentioned here is that we will focus on formal versus informal language. That is really, really important for the IELTS writing. So if you're if you're doing the academic and you're describing a diagram, for example, you need to use very formal vocabulary. If you're writing in the general and you're writing a letter to your brother, asking him to come visit you or something really everyday like that, you need to write very informally. And sometimes students might not really understand the difference with those 2 types of language. So we will focus on that as well to make sure you know formal and informal vocabulary. And then task 2 is actually the same. So if you're general or academic, you'll both do the same task 2. That's an essay, I know, 250 words. So it's going to be either an opinion essay. So you're going to write advantages and disadvantages of something. You'll write cause and effect, problem and solution. So you're going to be writing about your opinion. So we will spend time going through how to write this essay, what did examiners expect from you. So we will make sure that you know how to write the essay for the IELTS test. So this is the format that they like. So we will review those exact formats. So you know exactly when you go in there to do your test, how to write this essay effectively and what the IELTS examiners want. So we can help bring your writing up to a higher band score. So lots of writing practice when we do our writing weeks here with our IELTS course. So you'll get lots of practice. And of course, myself will be reading it and fixing it and editing and giving you tips and techniques and helping you with your own personal needs. Okay, here are some examples of what writing would look like. So these are just some tips. Every class will have tips included. So for example, this one's about how to count words because you need to have at least 150 or 250 words. So this is how they count those words. So techniques like this is actually very helpful because if you don't know them, you might count wrong. And if you don't have enough words, that's going to really negatively affect your band score. So things like this is really helpful for preparation before you take the IELTS. So we'll learn counting words, like what they expect and different types of, lots of different tips. Here's an example of some different task ones for general and academic. So this is an example of a general task. So you have to write a letter to someone you know. So this will just be what it would look like. This is the format, salutations, what you write in the letter, how your conclusion or your signing off. So this is an example of our focus for a task one for a general, and we'll look at different examples of what type of letters you might write. So actual examples from actual IELTS classes or tests, sorry. And here's a task one example for academic. You might have to do a bar chart describing. So you'll have a chart that looks something like this. It could be like population and years, or like people driving cars over time or something. It'll be a very general type of bar chart, but you'll have to use academic and formal vocabulary to describe what you see for 150 words. So we will focus on that and how to expand your word count. I find students have the most difficulty with their word count for a question like this. A bar chart is just one of the many possibilities you'll get. We will cover all of them during our IELTS. And finally, last but not least, we have our listening test. So that has 4 different parts. So section 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it gets a little bit more difficult as it goes on. So part 1 will be very just fill in the blanks, very simple, like you're hearing someone on the phone with a hotel receptionist, for example, making a booking, and you have to fill in the information like their address or his last name or the city they're traveling to. So it's a little bit more obvious what the answer is. And as we proceed through the sections, section 4 is the most difficult generally. So it will be a little bit more, it's not word for word, so you have to understand the entire context and actually write the answer based on the information you know, not just the word you hear. So we'll practice all 4 sections. And again, since these classes are small, we have a lot of one-on-one time. So if there's one section you need more help with, we can focus on what you need help with. So we'll also listen to real test recordings. So you can listen to how the dialogue sound. You'll hear exactly what you would hear in an IELTS test and see the questions exactly like the IELTS test. So you'll be ready for it. We'll also learn some tricks and techniques as well. For example, you only get to listen to the recording once. I know that can make people a little bit nervous. So we'll practice listening effectively techniques so that you know how to listen for the answer that one time and not get nervous and miss everything else. So we'll get a lot of practice so you're ready. And these are just last bit of examples of what the listening would look like. So every class, like I mentioned, you'll also get some test tips. So how to listen, what to do first, what kind of answers you might want to listen for, just things like that. We'll get lots of exam practice. You will get a mock test for every type. So we'll get to see a bunch of different examples. I see what a question was asked, very good, at IELTS and TOEFL. IELTS, I would say, is much better. It's much more world-renowned, and it's accepted for many different things like immigration and business and migration, university, while TOEFL is a little bit more academic based and it's a little bit more specific. If a specific job you're applying for says specifically get a TOEFL, that's different, but IELTS is a little bit better for just everything. So it's more, it's used a lot more for reasons you would take the IELTS. So I would recommend, if you have to do one, definitely do the IELTS test. Very good question. Thank you. Okay. Discussion. So we will, like I kind of mentioned, we're going to be doing speaking in every single class, basically. A little bit if it's not the speaking class, but you will do a bit of speaking every class, because speaking is the one that you really can't practice by yourself very much. So we'll do lots of discussion in class. Usually we end our classes with some discussion, or start our classes with discussion based on the topic from the lesson, just to get everyone talking and improving your general speaking ability. And here's another example of another type of listening, is a table completion. So table completion is just fill in the blanks. So we're going to look at real task examples, so you know exactly what to look for. All right, I know that seems like quite a lot in once. I know the IELTS can feel really scary and overwhelming, but I have seen all of my students have so much more confidence by the end of their 3 months. They usually enter a little bit scared, nervous, overwhelmed, because there is so much to know. But after 3 months of practicing every day, you really have that confidence and you know exactly what you're expected. I've been teaching IELTS for many years now, about 2 here with Canway. And I've had students tell me later, oh my gosh, teacher, I had the exact question that we did. Like, remember the question about cell phones? That was my question. So that happens quite often. So you'll get a lot of examples and a lot of practice. So you'll be confident and ready. And we'll also cover any things that could happen that might not be great. So being prepared. So what to do if something happens that you're not ready for. What to do if you have a new question or a topic you're not comfortable with. We're going to cover all of those topics. So even if it's something like, say, you get sports as a question, you don't really like sports, you'll be prepared to know what kind of answer to give, even if you don't really know what to say. So you'll be totally ready and have covered everything you might need to know. All right, so now's the time for questions. Any questions at all about Canaway or just the IELTS in general, English in general? Does anyone have any questions? You can put your hand up. There's a little hand up button, or you can write me in the chat if you'd like. So how's everyone doing? Any questions about IELTS? Not quite now. All right, I'll give you a couple minutes if you need to write your question out in the chat box. So does anyone have any plans on getting the IELTS test done shortly in the next few weeks or a few months? Or is everyone here just still thinking about it? Not too sure. I have some students here who here with Canaway. Oh, sorry, I see an example here. What's the difference between a degree, a bachelor's, or a master's? Okay, great. Oh, thanks everyone. Just keep the comments coming. I'm happy to answer. A degree, well, a bachelor's and a master's are both degrees. actually. So they're both degrees, but a bachelor's is that first 4 years of university, and the master's is what you take after. So when you first enter university, you get your bachelor's degree. That's the first 4 years, and then you get a degree. If you want to continue with education, then you can get your master's, and that's a higher level. It's like going further. After that, then you can get your PhD, for example. So they're both degrees, but bachelor first and then master's, like a little higher. That's what the difference is. Shadia is still thinking about it. Okay, good. Yeah, that's good. Glad you're thinking about it. And what is your name? My name is Veronica. Sorry if I didn't say that clear enough. Veronica Trunzo. I live in Calgary, in the western part of Canada, but I'm actually from Ottawa originally. And yeah, a little bit about myself is after I graduated university, I actually moved abroad. So I was living in Asia for quite a few years. I was in Cambodia and China for about 5 years total. Then I went to South America. I actually lived in Chile for a couple of years. I was teaching IELTS preparation there and business English and things like that. And then COVID happened. So I had to come back to Canada. But now I'm settled in Canada and very happy. But I have IELTS experience from many different countries and nationalities and languages. Yeah, now I'm just teaching online, which has been really lovely. Good. Okay. Any other questions before we finish up, or before I pass you back on to our host, and she will give you some more information about the course and how the course works and all of that. If you have any questions, you can ask her as well. Okay. Everyone all right then? No more questions? We're okay? All right. How many times do you speak? Okay, in our classes, we speak, in IELTS, we speak only English, unless you need a quick translation, but it's just the best way to learn. You don't want to get comfortable speaking, relying on your own language if you don't know a word. The reason for this is that in the IELTS test, for listening, for reading, you're going to come across some words that you don't know, especially for academic. You will have some times where you're like, I do not understand what she just said or what that word means, or I don't know what that word means in the reading. You don't get a dictionary and you don't get to ask them what the word means. Even in the speaking, you have to understand the question. So it's very important to be ready for that and how to understand the overall context of what someone is saying. So that's why I try to only use English in the IELTS, because if you don't know a word, instead of just saying, okay, what is it in Spanish? You have to think, okay, what is the context of what she's saying? So I'm able to understand and answer. Access program, do you need? No, there's recommended levels. I would recommend being in the, like a B1 at least, to be honest, but I've had students who are quite beginner join the IELTS. It can be a little trickier. It is very high level, as I mentioned. So I think being in the B level is probably helpful at minimum. But you will have your English improve during this time, because there's lots of vocabulary, there's lots of speaking practice. So, and of course, you can be working on your English overall as well. In other classes, for example. So you will see your English improve to like that C1 or level or so. But I have had students who were quite beginner as well in IELTS before. I have had lower level speakers and they actually improved and did pretty all right. So don't worry too much. If you're, really trying to say you want to get a job next year and you need an IELTS test, but you're, a lower level of English speaking, don't let that deter you from taking the IELTS, because this is a lot of English improving as well. So you will see improvement. And I'm used to teaching students who are advanced speakers who are super academic and fantastic speakers, and people who are just beginning and just got that basic English ability. And sometimes I've had all of them and everyone in between. So don't let that worry you too much about our program. Anyone can do this, I promise. Yeah, good. Any other questions? Yeah, if you can understand me, then you're fine. If you can understand most of it, at least. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, you're free to speak up out loud as well if you'd like. All right. How long is each class? Good question. It's an hour and a half. So 1 hour and 30 minutes, which goes by quickly. And it's a very useful amount of time. So yeah, 1 hour and 30 minutes. So that gives us lots of time for talking, vocabulary, grammar review, and of course, focusing on every aspect of each part here.